So good morning, everybody. How are you? This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a really interesting panel here. So, and anybody that's in this room is a winner, and anybody that's in the other room is a loser. So, just so you know that, out of the gate. So good morning, my name is Chuck Sacco. You can see my title up there. I'm actually a recovering entrepreneur, now sitting in academia. My background primarily, though, has been in tech businesses and have been part of 6 startups. My last startup was evolved into a company called Movitas. We eventually raised about $5 million in capital from angels and strategics. And the company today still exists, still involved with it in a very lightweight way, but it's a mobile technology company focused on the hospitality industry, and we're doing some very cool stuff in sunny, warm places like Mexico and the Caribbean. Although with the weather around here these days, I think Mexico and the Caribbean is going to creep up here at some point. So we've got a really cool panel today talking about hiring great people, which, as you know, if you're part of a startup or have ever try to hire people, is actually far more difficult than it sounds. And we're going to try to cover some key points today around what it means to hire great people. And we've got a great group of panelists. So what I'm going to do is ask each panelist to briefly introduce yourselves, your company and title. I'd also ask everyone on the panel to tell us something interesting, something that would surprise the audience here, a hobby, a cool talent, something interesting that other people may not know about you. So we normally go this from the moderator the other way, but we're actually going to go from this way. We'll mix it up a little bit. We'll start with Mike on the end. So I'm surprising you, Mike, already with this. So brief intro and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Mike Rappaport. I'm the CEO of Chariot Solutions. Chariot is a technology consulting firm. We do primarily high-end custom software development on a variety of platforms, such as the web and mobile devices. Our claim to fame is our near-perfect 12-year or 13-year track record of happy employees and successful clients. And the result, that's all the result entirely of hiring great people, which is why I'm up here today.
Cool. And tell us something really cool and interesting.
I tried to escape that one. Okay. My hobbies aren't that easy to talk about. I'll just say that most people don't know that I am an avid, diehard mixed martial arts fan right now, but something I will be actually getting into with my son in the spring, hopefully. Not to compete, just to train.
Very cool. All right, Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam Glasberg. I'm the head of people for RJ Metrics. At RJ Metrics, we inspire to help companies make data-driven decisions. Our cloud-based technology is basically there to help our customers consolidate, transform, and analyze their data. We work with some of the fastest online businesses in the world. I guess my interesting fact, I was kind of hoping we would skip this too. I am a 2-time Tough Mudder. I did 2 of them. I'm really big about doing races and staying in shape, so I pay to get electrocuted. So I get the
Very good. Dan?
Thanks, Chuck, and hi, everybody. My name is Dan Calista. I'm the founder and CEO of Vynamic. It's a management consulting firm here in Philadelphia. And today's actually a really special day to be here with you from a founder's perspective. 13 years ago today, I filed the papers to start the company. So this is actually my Vynamic anniversary. I can't think of any better way to celebrate it than to be with other entrepreneurs and business leaders here in the room. So Rick and the rest of the PSL group, thanks for the invitation to be a part of this. And I'm looking forward to sharing some stories about Vynamic. We are now a $25 million company in the management consulting business. We're home here is Philadelphia. We just expanded to Boston. I've grown to now 93 people, starting with 13 years ago. And I'm looking for, very passionate about people. As far as an interesting fact or interesting story, my first startup, interesting experience was, of all things, a tent rental business, a party rental. It's actually a fantastic business if anyone's looking for a business to get into. People are always in a good mood when you come and deliver a party tent. And the name of it was Desert Dan's Tents. Why desert? I don't know. It rhymed with, alliteration with Dan, but Desert Dan's Tents. So if you ever want to call me Desert Dan, I answer to that too.
Desert Dan, remember that.
Yeah.
All right, and Zach.
Hey everyone, I'm Zac Pappis, the Director of Community at DuckDuckGo. For those of you who have not heard of it, DuckDuckGo is the search engine that doesn't track you. So we are a default option in Safari and Firefox. The interesting thing about me would probably be maybe my first startup was actually, or my first semi-successful startup was a highly non-technical startup as well. It was actually parking lot line painting. So if you are around the Philly area or the mainline area and you are going through Bryn Mawr College, or you notice a very, very well-crafted parking lot line, that was probably the result of my own business.
That's great. And other interesting fact or
I've got
skill
many. I'm
or person you've met?
highly talented. Let's see. I was a internationally ranked Halo 2 player when that was a popular video game.
That's pretty cool.
And like Mike, I actually have a black belt in Haedongumdo, which is the Korean art of katana, like samurai sword. So,
Wow.
if this gets crazy.
So the moral of the story is don't mess with this panel, because we're going to kick some ass around here. So quick show of hands. Who of the startups in here are hiring people right now? Give us a quick show of hands. Okay, so this is going to be very pertinent to you in terms of what it takes to hire really great people. Okay, so that's good to know. And another quick show of hands. Who's hired really poor people? Yeah, same. Okay, so we got a lot to work on here this morning. All right, so let's I've been first offender there, so definitely. So to the panelists, first question is, at what stage of a startup during the kind of life and the early formation should you really be starting to hire people? At what point do you really start to say, hey man, I need to start hiring people for this business? Mike, you want to start?
I'll take a shot at this, even though it's been 13 years or so, but the nature of our business, it's consulting, it's software development, I need the people, can't do anything without the consultants. So when we started the business, we knew we needed to start, we ended up starting with about 10 employees. And the bottom line was, when we did our analysis and our assessment, we had to raise a lot more money. We had to increase the amount of our raise, or we would run out of money before we went too long, knowing that we needed to bring these people on board. And for us, we have a niche that involves a lot of professional development and reinvestment in our employees. So a full-time permanent employee model is what made sense. And based on the type of employee, these brilliant technologists, we also had to add and factor in an investment we would make every year in professional development for them in order to keep them there and keep them happy. So it was challenging, and back at that time was very shortly after 9/11, it was tough to raise money, and it was a very difficult situation. I can relate to the situation that a lot of you are in. I raised almost enough, to get it going, and I got it going and got lucky to get through, because after about 5 or 6 months, we almost ran out of money because we were growing, and it was difficult to do. So I strongly urge the planning part and being conservative in your planning, especially if you need to hire the employees up front.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I thought that story really is meaningful to me. I chose to not raise money, self-fund it through operations, but really the reality was there was probably no investors that were willing 13 years ago to invest back then. So it kind of had to face as like, all right, I want to grow the business, how are we going to do it? So I ended up, basically, the Dynamic startup story is I was married in September 13 years ago. On my honeymoon, convinced my wife that I'm going to quit my job when I get back and figure that out. And so by Thanksgiving, I was unemployed, and I was the bum of the in-law side of the family, and you bring me back. Yeah, right afterwards. They thought they were, I had a job before I was married. And so trying to get things started, of course, you got to add people, but I didn't have any savings or anything. And so I was able to get a client. Eventually that paid me. It took 3 months to get a paying client. I had to work for free initially. And then eventually that led to another opportunity. And so the risk early on was, hire people. I was always networking in the very beginning to find people. So when I found a project, I could get it going. And so that idea of always networking from the very beginning of looking for great talent. And then when the opportunity came, I could execute on that and bring somebody in. Now today we hire people without work. We're ready to go. But back then it was, all right, what are the chances that me and the 2 other people are all going to be unstaffed at the same time? If that played out, we would be out of business. If we weren't, then we'd get to live another day.
Interesting.
Just to reframe that, the question being, when should a startup, start considering a time to hire? And I would say almost immediately. For every startup, I've always recommended that you are preemptive about hiring, that even if a position has not shown itself to be a need, that you are, like Mike said, forecasting what your needs are And a lot of times that is a result of the inability to produce whatever it is your product is. So if it will be a detriment to your company or to your bottom line or whatever your core metric is because you have an inability to mobilize or you're just shorthanded, that is something that you should be thinking about from day one. Am I in some way hurting my business because of I'm the sole founder? Am I hurting my business because I'm not I'm always reaching out into a hiring pipeline at the last minute? So I would say be very forthright about that and be more aggressive earlier.
Does part of that also mean that you, like, let's say events like this, you should be out first knowing probably what you're going to need somewhere down the line, but really looking for talent now and just networking, building a list of people that you want to bring on board?
For sure. I would say personal networks are by far and large maybe the most successful way of hiring great people. Word of mouth is just a great organic mechanism for marketing, for all things. I think hiring is probably one of the strongest ways to do that.
Yeah, Sam?
Yeah, and just to add into that, I think that the one thing that, the one key word there is networking. It's super important to be out and about in the community talking about, what you are looking to do and building those relationships, because some needs might come as a surprise to you, and just because you're hiring doesn't mean that you're hiring full time. Maybe that there's something that you need to do to take your business to the next step and you don't have the bandwidth or you just can't do that. But maybe there's someone that can come help you from a freelance perspective. It's all about networking. And I think one of the awesome things about the Philadelphia community is just how awesome of a network we have here. I hear from everyone that comes from New York, from the Silicon Valley, San Francisco, area. I just can't believe how amazing Philadelphia is. You have a community here in Philadelphia of people that are here to support you. So if you have a need and you're building those relationships, when it comes time to make that first hire, you're already going to have the network that you need to do it. You don't want to start building your network when you have a need. You want to have a network that you can turn to when you have that first need.
So along those lines, though, how do you reconcile that dilemma of I need people that are going to help me build stuff and sell stuff, but I don't have the money yet in order to bring those people on board? I mean, as entrepreneurs, how do you figure that out? How do you resolve that dilemma of just, man, I need this to get this engine going?
One of the things that I think as entrepreneurs, that speaks to me is, you're trying to figure out, like, do I give maybe equity incentives? Do I, options and things like that? What I have found work well, and you think about it, is if you can't afford it, like I couldn't, create milestones, right? And so basically pay generously, pay richly on results. So you can attract that great talent, but create a milestone, whether it's a sales milestone, it's a customer milestone, and be very, very generous on it. For example, the first hire that Vynamic made, we made zero money on it, right, at all, and on the work that he was doing. But the idea, it was an outstanding person to hire, and I felt that it was the right move to make. And so everything that we were getting on doing the work, we had a paid work, so at least it wasn't a loss, but there was no margin to it. And at the time, I'm just thinking, like, finally get a project, finally get like a customer that's actually paying, and I'm making nothing on it. I literally got to be the worst entrepreneur in the world. And you had to play it forward a little bit.
That's great.
And on the flip side of that, I think that it's also really important to remember that there are intangible benefits. There are other benefits to working at a company that don't involve the salary that puts a roof on your head and food on the table. Yes, that's a pretty big thing, especially if you're coming out of college with student loans and debt and things like that. But there are things that you can offer people that are super meaningful to them that don't have a cost attributed with that. So at RJ Metrics, we offer flexible scheduling and a very flexible environment in general. We trust our team members. I've come from organizations where if you were going to be a minute after the start arrival time, 8:31, you'd have to email the entire company. And I didn't realize it until the end of my time there, but that played in a huge factor. It was a huge factor in my dissatisfaction. I was really unhappy because I didn't feel like my company that I was putting in all this effort was trusting me. So creating opportunities for people to grow in your company that don't necessarily have a cost associated with that. So the environment, allowing them to know that you trust them to, creating that flexible environment. We also have a time off policy with no constraints. Our people work really, really hard for us. They work a lot of hours, so we encourage them to take time off. We need it without constraints about that, as long as it's within reason. 7 years to date, 125 people, we haven't had a problem yet with a single person abusing it. And that is something, again, that costs absolutely nothing, really, if you think about it. So I think that there are other ways for you to find a way to differentiate your company that don't necessarily include, salary, equity, and things like that. It's important to be a different employer. of choice.
That's great points. Actually, a quick side question I just thought of. Is it easier, so Mike and Dan, in your guys' cases, because you're maybe a little more services-based, to onboard people earlier because you've got that services revenue component versus, what Sam and Zach may have in terms of more technology business, whereas you may not have that services component. Does it make it easier as a startup to get started that way and get people on the bus?
I thought it made it more difficult to me only because I had to, for one, we're dealing with A players, and even though, and I agree with what has been said, the other panelists have just been saying, there's a mix of things that we did. I mean, part is giving equity to our founding members. We started with 10 people, but the deal was that we close a job, we get them out there working. They're working at least a month before I ever send any invoice, and that invoice is going to be at least a month before I'm going to get paid, which these days we can laugh about, but in the beginning, we had our cash flow model down to the day. I had some people, and we had 10 people, but it was 10 partners. So what we did was they got a lot. Everyone at Chariot does get equity, but they had a lot more equity. My founding members had much more significant equity and reason, and I believe they accepted B salaries instead of A. Still, B salaries aren't cheap either when you start.
Yeah.
But they did it for the promise and the hope of being part of something that was special and that was beyond just money, rewards like that.
That's cool.
If I would add to that, I would say, to Mike's point, it really is about alignment. Whether you are finding that alignment, in the mission of the company or what you need as a founder, I think identifying something in that person that you may need help from that doesn't have to do with a monetary value is actually the most important thing. That, if they're more willing to take equity over a salary, then they are more willing to invest themselves and their own performance into the company as a result.
That's great. Any burning questions right now from the audience? Something anybody wants to ask? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think you may have just touched on it, Mike. Sam mentioned freelancing. Several people mentioned employees, and we just mentioned equity. What's a good kind of guiding principle for knowing when to use which and how much?
Yes, and knowing when to use the mix of salary, equity, other benefits.
I definitely think that's situation dependent. I mean, for me, I had several mentors, and we had a challenge because we didn't have money, and raising money was going to be difficult. Our entire plan was about having only superstars. That is our model to this day. And I wasn't sure what would work for the employees, the original 10. So I did meet with them and tried to get an understanding of what's going on in their lives, what makes the most sense, because people have families and it's difficult in some cases. And I came up with the mix based on conversations with my mentors and with what would be my original team.
Any other thoughts on that?
I think the only other thing that I would mention is it also, so it depends on your situation, your company situation, but it also depends on the person that you're talking to situation. I've worked with some of the other recruiters in the Philadelphia area, and I think one of the things that we've always agreed upon is it depends upon the candidate you're speaking with. Some people might be willing to take a little bit more risk for that longer term payout where they can take care of themselves for the long term, and someone else might not have the opportunity to do that. So it's important to figure out who your audience is and what's meaningful to them, and that it's fine for that to change employee to employee, but you have to figure out kind of where your limits are so that you aren't creating such a discrepancy internally.
So kind of follow on to that then, and Mike, to your point, so how do you hire A players on B and C salaries? Like how do you get the right people on the bus and the best and the brightest prospective employees?
I can tell you what worked for us in our situation. We spent the time I recommend this to everyone, any startup, but we spent the time to really profile what we felt was the ideal consultant. That's almost all of our employees are consultants, and the things that inspire them and excite them may be a little different than what excites the average person. So again, taking the time to understand it, we tailored our culture and our policies all around what drives them, such as continuous learning. They're not happy if they're doing a job for me for a year on one technology, but they're passionate about something different. How do we find a way to invest, and we've done this for all these years, 5 to 10% of their overall time in things that excite them, that they can pursue. Maybe it's contributing to open source or hackathons or writing a book. It's all different things, but that's part of what drives them. And over the long run, and money, again, part of our culture. In general, the type of people we have, money's not the most important thing. These people are at the top of their field. They deserve to make really good money, but their objective is not to maximize profit, nor is my objective as a business owner to maximize profit. Our customers wouldn't be as happy as they are now, and our employees wouldn't be as happy if we were all about maximizing profit. So it's just like everything else, it's a balance and what fits your situation the best, I believe.
Chris?
Yeah, I would echo that. I think going back to the alignment piece, just having a mission-driven hiring process where you're getting people, really drilling into what their personal motivations are and finding some sort of value or milestone that they can actually achieve. I would say nothing motivates like progress. You can give somebody a financial reward. Every raise that they will ever have in the tenure at your company will not do as much to motivate them or to align them with your mission as progress, as giving them real feedback about personal development, giving them long-term paths to be better. So I think if I were to summarize that, what it is if you are bringing somebody in on a B or C salary, that person is very likely to be aligned with the company mission. They are saying to themselves that in 3 years, I understand the long-term value of this is greater than the salary that you are paying me currently. And making that clear and giving them clear milestones like that is a good way to approach it.
I just want to add one more thing. I agree 100%. I think when Zac says alignment, that's such a great word. For us, it's so important is that alignment and understanding and setting up. We feel that we're a perfect home for a certain type of person. For the other type of person, it wouldn't work out nearly as well. So I really like that word alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of thinking deeply about growing your company for your people, not at the expense of your people. And the idea of how does that show up in the types of programs? Some benefit programs that are coming up, things about flexibility that were brought up. At Vynamic, we have a program that costs nothing, but it's been a huge success called Z-Mail. It's spelled ZZZ Mail, and the idea that it works for us, that we get inundated, like probably most of us, in emails, and we ask for no sending of emails all weekend, Saturday, Sunday. If something's critical, text your colleague, text me, call me, or 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. during the week, so Monday through Friday, and nothing at email. And that's just one thing. It doesn't cost anything. It gives us a chance to recharge and do even better work. And so just that comes out of knowing what your values stand for, the V in Vynamic, and one of those is growing for our people, not at the expense of our people.
That's great.
Plus one to everything else that was set up here, but I think the only thing that I would add in is you also owe them transparency. I think that's one of the things that our team members value so much is understanding where we're at, where we're going, and when we change, why we're changing. Everyone here is looking at starting a startup, and one of the things that is a huge part of being involved in a startup is stand shift quickly. 1 week you're doing something, and that is the way, and that's the way that you're going to be doing it, and 4 weeks later we're telling you that way couldn't be any further from the truth, and you need to switch, and that project that you've been working on, you got to put it aside and start working on something else. And that's fine if you explain to your people why you're doing that. If you just do that and you don't give them the transparency, the direction of your company and where you're at, it's hard for them to be bought into your company and to your success, and that's something that's important. So I would add that as well.
So, Sam, as following that, does that mean you are looking for the kind of person who can be adaptive?
Yes, the number one trait of someone that succeeds at RJ Metrics is definitely someone that's adaptable and flexible, because things do change, and as a startup, you have to you should be constantly assessing of what the best direction is and what you need to be doing in order to be successful, and you need people that are okay with that. And some people are not. Like, some people are looking for more stability, and that's
Sure.
fine. Some people like process, and they don't like it when the process changes, but other people are inspired to be in part of a culture where there's constant learning. And I think that, adaptability and flexibility in startup comes from the fact that you're constantly evolving and changing for the better, which
Yeah.
then thus creates a learning organization.
So for an advantage the startup has, you may think, well, I can't afford to pay people, I'm at a big disadvantage. So the advantage you end up having is the fact that you're providing people access to things, technology, services, so forth, maybe they wouldn't have ever had access to. And you're giving them an environment that they can learn, they can continuously learn, they can grow, they can adapt and do things they haven't been able to do before. So that's your assets, basically, as a startup when you think about hiring people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a second to transparency, be comfortable with skepticism. If you have people that are asking questions, be comfortable answering them. So if they're asking you why you're doing something, be okay answering that question. That is one of the things that I love most about our founders, is they appreciate a skeptic. There are times that I've been offended by some things that people have said about our organization, and they'll just sit there and they'll talk through. They're like, that's a really good point, let's talk about that. That's like, a startup is your baby, it's your idea, but be open to talking about different things and different ideas that your employees might have.
Yeah. So kind of follow on to that then, so let's go to the dark side for a minute. Have you ever made any poor hiring decisions? That you didn't bring that right person on the bus that you thought would have been adaptive, flexible, or for other reasons? and let everybody in the panel throw in on that one.
Okay, I will start. And I have made some poor hiring decisions. That said, not at my present company, not at Chariot Solutions. Believe it or not, in 13 years, and it's not me. Trust me, it's not me. All I did is sign on to the process. But I've had that many times, and I learned how much it costs. I think too many people don't factor the cost of hiring the wrong person into the equation. When you factor that in, it's a lot different when you're looking at the people you might hire. People, for us, our philosophy and our goal has always been, again, our claim to fame is having only superstars. We felt we can't have one unhappy customer, one project that doesn't go well. And in order to do that, whenever we're in doubt in our hiring process, which is a pretty rigorous process, we pass. I know we've passed on many people that would have been superstars, but we didn't know there was too much risk involved there. So we only accept those that we feel ultra confident in. And knock wood, I sit back and just admire it and don't mess with it. It does involve passing up business when you can't find the right person. Many, many times, it still happens all the time. I have to pass up jobs I can't do because I'm not going to hire someone who may or may not succeed on that job. So that's, to us, protecting our reputation means everything. So finding a way not to hire the wrong person is worth the investment to us.
That's awesome. Any horror stories, guys?
Not necessarily a story, but definitely a caveat. I don't think that it is at the front of everyone's mind when they're hiring that they are considering diversity. And I know that a lot of startups, I think Foursquare actually coined the term diversity of thought. And I've been talking to people about this today because it's been in our conversation all week. But that is when you're hiring, if you're hiring the same types of people that always agree with you or are of the same Myers-Briggs type, whatever it is that you feel you are evaluating these people on. What you are looking for is diversity of thought, the ability to embody in your product or your service the mainstream audience or the audience that you're trying to capture. So I think it is a very difficult thing. I know this is a challenge for every single startup, especially tech startups, to find gender diversity or to find any other type of diversity, actually. And to make that a point as early as possible and to develop a great pipeline for that, I think is of the utmost importance because it will come back to bite you and it is an insurmountable problem.
That's amazing points. Yeah, excellent.
Fortunately, at RJ Metrics, I have not hired anyone that has been a horror story. I
Wow.
have definitely hired horror stories in my previous positions. Definitely like Jekyll and Hyde situation. One shows up for the interview and the next person shows up for the job and you don't really know what you get yourself into. But I think that one of the things that's really important to remember when you're hiring is, sometimes you're gonna make mistakes and that's okay. I think the important thing, when you're hiring people is to constantly be assessing what your needs are, if your needs changed, if that person's being successful in the role. And one of the things that I feel like I hear about way too frequently, and it's one of the things that, we're constantly assessing in RJ Metrics is, feedback is important to us, both ways, but making sure the person knows where they stand and where they're being successful. And if they're not being successful, communicating that to them and giving them the opportunity to change. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. 9 out of 10 times it's for the better. So being able to have that conversation and, watching your employees and having those open dialogues about, where they are they meeting performance expectations, are they not, what they need to do to improve, I find far too often people avoid that conversation. It is everyone in this room, your body's natural response is to run as far as and as fast as possible as you can in the opposite direction of conflict. And having conversations about performance is typically one that people try to avoid. So think about owing it to your team members. And if it's not working, it's not working, and that's fine. Being okay with making that mistake and figure out what your risk tolerance is. If you're hiring a founding team member, if you're hiring a partner, your risk tolerance is going to be much different than where I'm at today if I'm looking to add another engineer or another sales team member.
Do you think there's a risk, though, in a kind of tight community, especially here in Philly, that if you hire the wrong person and you have to part ways, that your reputation as a firm then could suffer? Is there any backlash, or you're not worried about that?
I think people are people, and there's always the chance for backlash. And I think that the only way that you can avoid the backlash is by doing all the right things before that person's leaving.
That's good.
If you're not talking to that person about not being successful, if you're not creating an environment where they can be successful, and you're not being transparent, then you're kind of asking for them to leave and say that, hey, XYZ company just fired me, and my boss never told me that I was doing a bad job, that I just left. to date, we've had to part with some team members at RJ Metrics, and I'm sure every organization up here has had to do the same.
Yep.
But I guarantee every single person was working with their manager and their lead for months before that, because we're trying to make it work. And there's no hard feelings, and now those folks are being successful in other actually great startups in Philadelphia. Just because it doesn't work doesn't mean it has to end, it doesn't have to be a bad breakup.
Yeah.
It can be, it's not you, it's not me,
That's how I'm-
it can be mutually beneficial.
I would also add, I think that every startup founder and even every employee should be egoless in the sense that even if that were to happen, that should not affect you. It should not come at the cost of having a bad team member. Nothing rots a team like a bad team member. You want every person in your organization to be the type of person that you want others to exemplify. So I think in that case, I mean, if they came away from this, they wrote a blog post or they said something publicly, that is maybe another indication that person was not right for your team. But to your point, you want to make sure that you're doing that transparently and that you have a methodology that can be applied across your organization, almost as a metrics-based approach, but being real with yourself to say, this is not working, we need to have a real conversation about it. You are not performing, or maybe your attitude is incorrect, or you're not aligned with the company's goals, and I want you to be honest with me about whether or not you are going to be happy here. So having that conversation, I think, is the most important thing, but just being egoless about it and not worrying about downside risk. The biggest downside risk that you will have is maintaining that person.
Yeah, that means moving quickly too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What questions do we have? Corey?
Yeah, so for those out here that might not have the experience that you have with interviewing, and getting to, figuring out where the disconnect or the misalignment might be with someone you're interviewing, can you maybe talk about a philosophy or questions that you ask that get beyond, can this person do the job, and are they interested, but really kind of digging deeper to explore that area. And if you're feeling brave, maybe talk about a complete failure you had and looking back on it, maybe how you could have avoided that in the interview process. Because ultimately, I think that's what the big question is how you delve deeper and really uncover where that misalignment might be. Does that make sense?
So at DuckDuckGo, we actually have a very unique hiring process that Gabriel Weinberg actually coined the term for, called inbound hiring. And that is, we hire everybody from our community. We have an open source side that you can contribute to if you're a programmer. We have plenty of feedback options. We have a community that you can be involved in as a non-technical person. And in all those areas, the way our pipeline works is if you are interested in improving our product or being involved, you have every avenue available to you to do so. And so we work directly with our community. When there is an open position, we first look at people who have been contributing regardless of, whether there was a position open for them. They are actually aligned with the mission. They want to improve the product. They are clearly using it. And that works as a really great top-level filter. When we get down to the point of an interview, hopefully by that point we've kind of fleshed out a little bit more than maybe a regular application process. But I don't really ascribe to the idea that there is a perfect interview question or set of questions. Again, you want to kind of tailor this to the position and to the person that you're talking to. But something that I like to start out with is a personal histories thing. And the point there is to ask this person to kind of give you the history of their life from beginning to now in the ways that they feel important. And you can see from the things that they're drawing on in their personal history what has helped shape their life and what's in their mental model all the time. Was it the sports experience they had when they were a kid? Was it an entrepreneurial experience that they had earlier? And tying those threads together in an intelligent way and kind of digging deeper to find out who they are as people, I think is a good start. But then, really making it, I think communicating the company mission and what you're looking for as clearly as possible is the most important thing. So following up with questions that address that specifically and address their understanding of that specifically, I think are secondarily, or maybe the most important.
I completely agree with Zach. You have to tailor the interview for every single position that you're looking for. How I hire a salesperson looks completely different how I hire an engineer, and it looks even more different than how we hire an executive. But I will say that I have a couple questions that I do love in particular, but there's one that just kind of comes to mind. And in terms of if you're having an issue where you're hiring someone and they're not kind of bought into what you're doing, or you're figuring out that there might be an issue, I find that a lot of things can be, so like going back to the beginning of the interview process, one of the first things that I do after introducing myself, getting like a high level history, is I say, so what's meaningful to you? Like, you're in a job search right now, why? Talk to me through that. This is before I've told them anything about our position, anything about what's meaningful to me, what I'm looking for. That is the moment where that person is, I would say, in all of my years of recruiting, 95% of the time, super truthful with you about the things that are most meaningful to them. I'm looking for money, I'm looking for a culture, I'm looking for an opportunity to grow. And I think that you have to be honest with yourself when you're hearing the answers to that. Is that the thing that I can offer, or those are things that I'm looking for? And I would say I probably 30 to 40% of candidates that I speak to, I push back on that. When they say, like, these are the things that are meaningful to me. If that's something that I can't offer, I say, well, this is something that I'm not going to be able to offer you in this role here. Like, this is what this role does look like, and this is what it is. But we have that very honest conversation. So I think just being honest in an interview process is really important. Something that is RJ specific that I do actually really, really like is in our interview process, we do ask everyone, whether you are being hired as an administrative assistant or you're being hired as an executive, to complete a small project that we've created. And it's not a project where it's not designed for people to put in 8, 10, 12, 24 hours of work. You need to be respectful to people that you're interviewing's time. It should only take them, a couple of hours, maybe 2-3 hours tops for them to complete that. We weed out a lot of people that just, from commitment perspectives, just choose not to do that project in general. So they're saving us a lot of time by saying, I don't have the time to do this, I don't need to do this. A lot of companies are turning to that. But from that, we're also getting the opportunity to really see into what that candidate is able to do. We're giving that candidate the opportunity to show their true technical skills and capabilities, which a lot of times you can't vet in a face-to-face interview or a phone interview. So if you are hiring, I strongly suggest, a strong project and giving folks the opportunity to showcase their true technical skills and capabilities.
Great.
Sorry, that was really long-winded.
Another question? Max?
Sam, you spoke briefly about how the risks are greater, especially when you're looking for members of a founding team. So I just want the whole panel, if you all speak to looking for members and hiring members as part of a founding team.
Sure, I can speak to that. Now, my founding team I had worked with for years, which was really, really incredibly helpful. For the first time in my career, my transition from the company I ran before Chariot to Chariot was the first time I made the leap of letting my success be completely dependent on other people. Before that, when I was younger and I was the master of disaster and things were about me, and this is not about me at all. It puts so much more burden on having the right team. And really, ultimately, to me, it's always been the same. It's about trust. It's about great people. It's about alignment and having similar goals and philosophies. And for us, it's been about discipline. Having the discipline to, again, not make a wrong decision because there's money involved, because of the money factors. So for our founding members, and it's also a commitment to involving them. What they wanted, instead of maximum dollar to begin with, which we didn't have, they wanted to be included in the things that were happening, major company decisions. They want to be a part of something. Part of why they took this is to make a difference. We actually, part of our interview process, I didn't mention it earlier, but we have all these code tests, all these things to prove you're a technical genius. But when those are all done, then people make it to me. And to me, it's different. My part of the interview is to make sure that you fit, that culturally, that you're the right person for this job, that, this is going to be, there's perfect alignment between you. You want to make a difference. You care more about the impact you make than about maximizing your return. You care more about the team and put the team before yourself. This is just for us what really works in what we do. I won't go on too much.
Question back there.
Following up the question about freelancers, I'd like to get your panel's perspective on how the strategy, how you effectively strategize to kind of manage some of the freelancers, how that differs or similar to some of your existing management. I mean, there's some studies say 60% of the workforce can be freelancers by 2020. How does that change in your kind of process managing freelancers?
It shows up in my industry, with management consulting a lot, and there's a lot of companies that can do quite well with a majority of freelancers working in it. We will hire entrepreneurs for internal projects, a creative service or an amazing video or other things. But for our work, we hire full-time employees and always have, and that creates the culture that we're looking for. And so we've had much stronger success by really investing in people, investing in the culture, investing in making decisions for the long term through hiring full-time employees that are really bought into the vision of where the company's going.
Question back there.
Firm believer that if you running a very early stage company. When you're designing your company's strategy and you're designing your company's culture, what tools do you use to make sure that the strategy of your company and your culture are aligned?
By the way, great question, because that was going to be one of our next questions for the panel. So perfect. So good tie-in.
So this is definitely, I have a lot of memories of what went on when we were doing this, and it was the 10 people that we started with. It was through conversations with them and understanding what motivates them and what drives them. Actually, I'm having a senior moment. What was the main crux of the last part of the question?
How do you design a culture and strategy at the same time that work together?
Perfect. I knew it was meaningful to me. I warned them I have senior moments. It happens
rambling
now. No, you were good. I ran. So for us, our business, they're so intertwined. They were from the beginning. What really happened was I wrote a business plan. I went to my mentors. It was just to start a consulting firm, an IT consulting firm like many other people have done before me. But the 10 people changed all that. They didn't want to be a regular consulting firm. They wanted to be something different. They wanted to be, and we had already seen in our space, I could go on forever about this, but I don't have time to do that. But in software development, most software developers, professional software developers, are really not cut out for that job. So we're all fighting for the best people, constantly fighting for the best people. Well, these 10 people convinced me that having only superstars and having a place that's the perfect home for those superstars will be our competitive advantage, not only to our clients, but to hiring people. And they are right, and word does spread. And if you create a great, great place to work with a culture that's aligned toward, for us, these deeply technical people. Again, for us, it involves 10%, 5 to 10% investment in professional development for them. In other companies, it might be different. That's a big investment. When you're starting the business, and my mentors looked at it and said, well, that's all great, and you're aligned real well, except how you're going to make money. You know, and for us, it was the faith and the confidence, and these people felt that one great software developer is worth a lot more than 2 others. Maybe they can get the job done faster than the 2 others, but more importantly, what they develop, it serves its purpose much better than it would if you're not using these top tier.
But Mike, along those lines, is culture, is something you set out and you, not dictate, but you almost plan for and tie to strategy, or does it evolve over time as just as a result of the people that come on the bus with you?
Well, I think for us it was more the former, because the original team sort of set that strategy, and then that determined who we went and got, who was attractive to us, or the people we spoke with, who fit in the best based on the culture we had already established.
Yeah.
And from there, the reputation has led to many more people coming.
Gotcha. Dan?
Yeah, you think about, like, I love the comment that culture, you have a culture, right? Sometimes people come and say, well, how do you, like, I need a company culture, right? We all know, right? We have cultures, whether it's a bad one or a good one, right? And, I like the definition of culture being, something to the effect of, like, culture equals, values plus behaviors. It's like what you say is meaningful to you versus your actions. And together, that comes true. So, you say, people are, come first, but when faced with a trade-off, client has a big project ahead of you, but you don't got the people. How are you going to approach that? How are you going to face that challenge? And I believe that culture is a function of commitment, not size. So if you're committed to it at a very small size, is powerful. And from the very beginning, the founding principles, all the way through to being a much larger company. If you as a leader and you really create programs of your commitment, you will continue to have a very strong culture.
That's great.
I think the only thing that I wanted to add to that was, I think a lot of times from what I see, people mistake culture as, so I'll name some of the things at RJ, the beer pong, or sorry, that's bad. The ping pong, the ping pong table, the keg in the kitchen, the weekly catered lunches, like that's not our culture. Those are the perks. Those are the product of our culture. And our culture is that we value our people. And one of the foundations of our culture is something that we call do the right thing. And that is a huge part of our business model, and it's also a huge part of our culture and the way that we treat people. So remember that you can't shape a culture by adding perks. All the perks that we added, we didn't add because we thought that they would make our culture better. All those things somehow were a product of our culture, and our culture is our people. And most likely your culture is your people too, which I think is basically what both of you just said.
Great. All right, we're going to have time for one more question and then a few remaining comments from the panelists. So one more question. Back here.
So how do you find a perfect person to hire?
The perfect person to hire. That's...
You don't. There isn't a perfect person. It's like Mr. Right and Mr. Right now. There was a good point there that I wanted to mention, which is competence versus culture fit. And I made a specific note to mention it during this panel because I do think it's very important. And that is, personally, and I think maybe everybody here would agree, I am much more likely to hire someone that is aligned culturally than they are demonstrating their ability. So I would take a very novice programmer who is super enthusiastic about the mission and who really wants to develop themselves over an A-list programmer who can get the job done immediately, who is not as culturally aligned. And the reason for that is what we were talking about earlier, this long-term value that you're providing this person in their growth, in their personal growth, their career growth, and the value that they're extracting outside of that from your own company. So I think that is extremely important. Not to overvalue the competence of someone and actually just give that weight to the culture side.
Do any of you guys use recruiters, by the way? What's that?
I said I'm a recruiter.
You are a recruiter. Well, I mean external. I'm sorry, I meant external recruiter.
No.
Okay. Yeah. But are there any recruiters in the room? Close your ears. No, it's that culture thing, right? So that make sure you have, if you do use a recruiter, make sure that somebody really is embedded with you and has that alignment, or an internal recruiter like Sam. But if you use an external person, then you got to really double check that.
Yeah, it should make sense. The best recruiter for your team should be someone that is either currently on your team or was a former member of your team, like someone that gets it.
That's it. Yeah.
So I was that person. In my previous role, I was the evil person that we're talking about right now. I was a recruiter for a staffing firm. There are good ones out there, so I feel the need. I do feel the need to defend them in that regard. That said, I think that there are a lot of ones out there that are not good. I think that you have to determine if you're going to make that leap and you are going to use an outside partner. The piece that you mentioned, you need to make sure that they understand your business and that they're the person that you want to be out there representing your business. That's something that's
the
really
key.
important.
Yeah.
If you find a good recruiter, they can be a great tool for you.
Oh, yeah.
They truly can. But you have to do your homework before you trust them to go out and talk about your brand.
Yeah, a great recruiter is going to give you the depth and the reach maybe that you don't have individually, right?
Yeah, and some recruiter, truth be told, some recruiters might have access to individuals that you might not, because that person might have a relationship with them and they're keeping their search really confidential because they're currently employed and they're not posting their resume or talking to other people, but they have a contact. So there are definitely upsides in addition to the downsides of working with external partners. We don't use them now. We have used them in the past and not much success, but we do have 2 folks that we have hired, and for our executive team, we do outsource most of the time.
Great advice, Sam. All right, any last remaining comments, anything that you guys didn't get to that you wanted to talk today about hiring great people? And we'll start with Mike and work back to Zach.
Okay. I would just say, based on everything that Sam, Dan, and Zach have said, and myself as well, that our success, clearly, we're all betting on the people, and we feel that, and to me, for just about any business, that your people, your employees, are the most important and most critical factor to success. Even if you have a product, who's creating the product? Who's, what's going into that? What kind of thought? What kind of passion? And to me, attention is being played to details. All about involving them, empowering them, including them. You mentioned transparency, treating them like the heroes they are, because if you're going to be successful, it's based on them and what they do.
The piece that I really wanted to mention was not actually about the folks that you hire, but the folks that you don't. So I think everyone knows the saying, you go to a good restaurant, you tell one person, you go to a restaurant, you're going to tell 10 people. It's super important from a brand perspective. You have your brand as a company, but you also have your recruitment brand. You have the brand that attracts people to want to be a part of your organization. And one of the things that I learned early on, and from an advisor at my previous company, and it was super meaningful for me to hear, was remember that for you, this is just one applicant in a pile of 1,000. For that person, this is their one job opportunity. This is that one step that puts a roof over their head and food over their table. Be respectful to everyone that goes through your process. I don't see that enough, and I hear a lot of really sad stories. Think about how you would want to be treated when you are, hiring folks. I guarantee you it'll pay off tenfold, because people will remember that you respected them throughout that process, and that person might not have been the perfect person for hire number 4, but maybe they're the perfect hire for hire 440, and you really don't want to burn that bridge right now.
That's great advice, Sam. Good. Dan?
I love the ideas expressed today, the questions that are coming up. But all of you, by being in this room, you value and you see the strategic value to hiring great people. And I think if you just stay focused on that, continue to have that commitment, be involved in every hiring decision. I've interviewed and hired every person at Vynamic, and that's very near and dear to me. And so therefore, by being here, just continue. We all have pressures as founding entrepreneurs and building businesses. That okay, I'm really gonna focus on people, and I'm gonna enable our people to be really successful. If you really put that mindset on, I think that will shape all kinds of amazing expressions of how your culture can attract and retain the best talent.
Great. And Zach?
Just echoing on the culture piece again, I think it's important because we have not said this. You as founding entrepreneurs, as CEOs or leaders, it is important that you know when to say no and when the people in your organization may be drawing you in a different way than you'd originally planned. When that is a positive thing and when that is a negative thing. I would just say have confidence in yourself and what you want out of an employee, what you want out of a role, how you would like to see your team shaped over time, and really take the time to flesh that out. Write it down, talk to other people in your organization, and see how it plays out. Become overly confident in your mission and the way that you pitch it to people, because ultimately that will make you more confident when you are interviewing people or when you're pitching your startup, or when things change in the market and you have to reassess your own values. You say, these are my core values. These are the things that I never ever veer from. And I think it is. I think I see a few meek people that really find an all-star employee and they let them maybe take too much from the company's original path.
That's great. Good. Sorry we didn't get to everybody's questions. This is a panel probably we could have done another 45 minutes, no doubt. So hopefully some of the panelists can stay and answer some of your questions. I want to thank everybody that was on the panel today. So thanks, guys. Good job.